Like, comment, and subscribe to J New Orleans.
Welcome. Before we start, we have breaking news. And before I deliver the breaking news, I would like to say trigger warning that, first of all, condolences to all of the employees and passengers impacted by Spirit. Spirit is gone, you guys. They're gone. They're gone. They're gone. And right before I started doing the video, did a little freestyle. Every flight I take, every itinerary I make, every layover I break, what an airline to take, what a soul to break. We'll be missing you, Spirit. And here's the other part. Saying rise up to the light in the sky, yeah. Watch the light lift your heart up, burn your flame through the night. Whoa, spirit, watch the heavens open, yeah. Spirit, rest in peace, spirit. You will be missed. Okay, now down to business. The job I never applied for, the job you never applied for, the job we never applied for, aka overgiving. Um, una memento por favor. I updated it and I need to. Okay, full script. There we go. The job I didn't know I had was being a 24/7 crisis line for everyone with my phone number. No application, no interview, no orientation, no lunch break, no benefits, no retirement plan, just me, my phone, my nervous system, and a long list of people who somehow believe my availability was a public utility. I wasn't just friend, family, just someone who cared. I had become an unpaid emotional emergency department. And the crazy part is, I didn't even realize I was clocked in. And sleeping light. I used to sleep light so I could hit a phone. That is a level of programming that sounds normal when you are in it, but insane once you heal enough to look back at it. I will wake up exhausted from midnight phone scrolling, trying to make sure everyone was okay, trying to make sure I did not miss a late night emergency, trying to make sure no one needed me, trying to make sure I was not being selfish for sleeping like a normal human being. And when you really sit with that, that is not kindness anymore. That is surveillance. That is hypervigilance. That is your body being trained to believe rest is dangerous because somebody else might need rescuing. At some point, your phone stops being a phone. It becomes an alarm system. It becomes a leash. It becomes a little glowing rectangle that convinces you someone else's lack of stability is now your responsibility. And that is how a person can be physically in bed but emotionally on call. And that also is worsened if you are around people who are habitual failures, because depending on your relationship with them, you already more than likely feel obligation. And then depending on your history of assisting them, they begin to feel obligated to your assistance to the point that they may even change some of their habits of their journey and lessen their intensity on their journey because they know that you're there to pick them up. When being needed becomes an identity. The wild part is that this preferential treatment had no preference. If someone was around me, if they made me feel needed, if they knew how to say the right thing, if they knew how to look helpless enough, I was there. I had this engraved mindset that I knew what loss felt like. I knew what the bottom felt like. I knew what it felt like to feel alone. So, somewhere in my mind, I made it my sworn duty to keep as many people afloat as possible. But I missed one important question. Were they drowning or were they trained to keep jumping back into the same water? because there's a difference between someone who fell into a hole and someone who built a timeshare at the bottom of it. Word to Disney. And some people do not want a ladder. They want you to decorate the hole. They want curtains, they want Wi-Fi, they want emotional support snacks. They want you to come sit in the hole with them and call it loyalty. And the thing about being needed is that it can feel like love when you have not learned the difference. Being needed can feel meaningful. Being needed can feel validating. It can also make you feel chosen, but there are instances people are not choosing you because they love you. Sometimes they're choosing you because you're useful, and usefulness can become a trap when you confuse it with value. Not to mention, the longer you've been in that role, that's the deeper doo-doo you're in at that point. And that, depending on, again, who the parties are in question and what they mean to you, the guilt that you may feel separating from them, especially if you were under the impression that you were helping them by helping them, and in reality you were further crippling them. You were replacing their training wheels with more training wheels. Then you just said forget about it, took them off the bike and just started carrying them in your own arms. That's why your arms always tired. The difference between helping and being used, oh brother, helping someone is supposed to move them towards stability, but being used keeps them dependent and keeps you drained. Real help should have direction. It should have limits. It should have honesty. It should have some kind of movement. But what I was doing was not always helping. Sometimes, many times, I was cushioning consequences. A lot of times, I was interrupting lessons. All of the time, I was paying emotional rent in houses I did not live in. I was pouring my energy into people who had no intentions of changing the behavior that created the crises. And that is where overgiving becomes dangerous, because when you keep rescuing people from consequences, some of them stop seeing consequences as real. They start seeing you as the consequent management department. They do not have to develop problem solving skills because you are always available. They do not have to plan because you're always adjusting. They do not have to sit with discomfort because you're always absorbing it. They do not have to grow because you keep building ramps over the lessons they were supposed to climb. There is a difference between helping someone carry a heavy load and becoming the person they throw all their weight onto. And when you are always the strong one, people sometimes forget that strong things can still break. And in my personal experiences with these kinds of scenarios, I always let the scenarios die out because I wanted to study everything going on. I wanted to see my part. How was I attracting this? If it was a new person, if it was a person that been around, or a person I'm connected to, or a person I knew long enough. My next question was, did I pick up some of their ways? Because I do know from my experience that people do pick up each other's ways, even if it's ways that you may feel like are not appropriate. Sometimes being around that person subtly will influence you to do your own version of it. So you never really notice that you're doing it because you're thinking about the way that the person in question does it, but you'll be and developed it in a way where you're doing it in your environments, but you none the wiser. And then people typically either don't get it right when they're telling you that you're doing these kinds of things, or many of them either will not notice, brush it off, give you unlimited grace for it and just never mention it, or sometimes they just benefiting from you enough to where it don't really matter to tell you anything about anything, or it's easier to just talk about you to other people because that's super common. Like, and it's not always about venting. Some people just legit will contact other people and repeat things you said, talk about different things you've done. If they may have told you how they felt, but then to hit a home run, they go and tell more people that, oh yeah, because I told so and so this, and this, and this, and this. And can you believe this? Self-inflicted crises and outsource solutions. I did not. Oh, and also another part about what was mentioned in section 4 is that the people get so bold with depending on you that they start to outsource every issue to you. It'll be things that they'll like the people I experienced in these situations were phone addicts. So they would have their phone, which is connected to the internet all day long, and literally would try to make me J New Orleans GPT and ask me things that they could have literally found on the internet much faster, knowing that depending on what career field I was in, that was on the main front, or if it was personal, medical, whatever, where I was incapacitated, these people would wait until I was back to do or answer simple things that they could have done from the phone that they messaged me from. And it showed me when I saw that these people, they mean business. They're not trying to change, they're not trying to grow, they're not doing anything. They're literally siphoning you. And I find not at all, but in a lot of the cases, the people put 20 on 10 in regards to whatever y'all relationship is, especially immediately after a favor or before a favor. They start going in with the family, friend, I love you, and all of these different things. Or some people who have the long game expertise, they'll start well ahead. But if you peep in game and if you peep their pattern, like say for instance, if they only talk to you once a month, every month, if it's that kind of person and all of a sudden they're reaching out to you outside of y'all regular, unspoken communication cycle, favor coming, favor loading. So I did not look at the fact that many of these scenarios were self-inflicted, repetitive, and predictable. I actually did, but I didn't I used to really feel guilty about thinking negatively about people I care about, and I will overcompensate for the fact that many people do talk about people behind their back. Everything I saw that was common flaws in people, I made it my duty to not to be the anti of all of that. So I was like the super friend, super family member, super whatever category, I was super. And when it came to work, I was super, but not in the kissing behind at work, because I honestly don't even like talking to coworkers like that, because I've never been able to small talk since childhood. You can guess what causes that, but anyways, so for me, like at work, I always have a good reputation because from childhood, I've always learned that when you do what you're supposed to do and keep it maintained, whoever the person is above you that's probably getting on your nerves, telling you to do what you need to do, you can actually lessen that by doing that. And it's worked for me 95% of the time. The 5% it didn't work is because people at work project all of their inner pain. So even though I in the 5% situations, it was still it was still like smoke for me. Like I had smoke for the environment, because I don't believe in toxic work environments. So yeah. And the same bad relationship, the same toxic friendship, the same job they hated but refused to leave, the apartment they complained about. I heard something ringing. That's why I paused like that, but it's not anything ringing in here. Probably outside. The same apartment they complained about for 50 hours a week, but kept renewing the lease. The same family drama, the same lover they swore they were done with, only to take them back before the credits roll. The same bad decisions wearing a different outfit. And somehow I was expected to keep showing up with fresh sympathy for recycled chaos. At some point, you have to ask, is this a crisis or is this a subscription? Because some people do not have emergencies, they have a lifestyle. And if you're not careful, their lifestyle becomes your unpaid occupation. Some people are trained to outsource the solution. They do not pause and ask, what can I do differently? Or develop a plan. They develop a contact list. They do not study their patterns. They study answers, who answers the fastest. And if you are always the first person to answer, you slowly become part of the problem you thought you were helping to solve. Story time. I will never forget. It was 2012 and I was not living in New Orleans, so I was visiting New Orleans at a certain time after two tragic deaths within 24 hours mentioned in previous videos. And getting to hang out with some of the people that I had connected with through social media while I was still living in Houston, even though I'm from here, but I didn't know them when I lived here because, 15 years old. Baby, when I tell you the amount of people who would have to call around for everything, like I'll never forget this one individual was like, "We should go out. You out here, we should go out." And then we go out. Wait, come an hour early because I'm gonna have to get ready. But it wasn't get ready physically. They were already physically ready. It was because they had to go through their phone and beg for every aspect of the night they had planned. They had to beg for the club entry fee. They had to beg for the parking fee. They had to beg for the drinking money. They had to beg for they liked other stuff like, you know, trees and all of that. Beg for that money. And just, once I seen that, that just let me know what I always suspected when I used to be on the receiving end of a begging call, that people really did do that. So it was amazing to see that. And I'll never forget that because clearly it was 14 years ago. But I have the memory of an elephant, unfortunately. I pretend like I don't remember stuff just to fit in, but no, I remember everything. Why I never asked for help. Meanwhile, Troop Serum could not then and still cannot now get me to ask for help easily. I can feel I can help everyone else build the bridge, but if I'm standing over water, I will start looking for wood, nails, a YouTube tutorial, and a backup generator before I ask someone to pass me a rope. And true story. And unfortunately for me, the few times, also the sad part about that is that people typically have negative things to say about that aspect, but those people in turn have proved to be unreliable. Yeah, but and unfortunately for me, the few times I bent enough to ask for help, some people used it as an opportunity to reenact the Simba and Scar scene from The Lion King. You know the scene, you finally reach up and you finally trust someone with your vulnerability, and instead of pulling you up, they lean in close and say, "Long live the king." And then that moment kind of changes you. It teaches you that being vulnerable around the wrong people is not healing, it is evidence collection. And after that, you start building a life where no one can reach the control panel. You start becoming the mechanic, the security guard, the accountant, the therapist, the emergency contact, and the repairman in your own ecosystem. Not always because you want to, sometimes because experience taught you that dependence in the wrong hands can be a weapon. Simba and Scar moment. When people betray you after you finally ask for help, it does something deep. Like that actually is probably in the realm of heartbreak and all of the other pains that people think about because it's not just the pain you're experiencing from the situation, it goes deeper than that because whoever the person is, now you're questioning every moment you enjoy with them. Now you're questioning your brain. If you have my memory, your brain brings you back to when you first met them, and now you're beating yourself up because you didn't see the signs and any negative thing they've ever done that you've either let slide or never addressed. Now you're feeling guilt over that. It has you looking at everyone else who is still remaining in your life and making you wonder, are they going to do it next to you? It makes you look at every future person, or even for people who like to look at lifestyle content on social media, it makes you look at every person in that category that experience what you experience, or with people who did in the category that put you through the situation, saying in your head, "Oh, that person gonna turn on her. Look at how she looking at her." I remember my monitoring spirit people used to look at me like that. It's really stuff like that really needs therapy. I like therapy. I wish other people did because then it would change. It wouldn't change their life. Because they would end up being the one changing their life, but it would change the way they're viewing things. Because the whole reason that people get stuck in cycles is because their view, like the view is on night mode, but it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. If you've ever used any night vision things in the sunlight, you never do that. You'll go blind. and it rewires your relationship with need. You start telling yourself, I will never need anyone again. I will never let anyone see me down again. I will never give somebody that kind of access again. And that is how self sufficiency becomes both your strength and your prison. Because there is healthy independence and then there is trauma built independence. Healthy independence says, I can stand on my own. Trauma built independence says, I better stand on my own because people are dangerous when they see me fall. The second one may protect you, but it can also exhaust you because it means when you're tired, you will not ask. Even when you're overwhelmed, you will not reach. Even when you're scared, you will not admit it. Even when your body is screaming, you will say, I got it. And sometimes I got it is not confidence. Sometimes I got it is a wound speaking fluent survival. Younger me used to look at, like, because I self resolved most issues I've ever faced outside of professional help, if that's included. But when it comes to, let me pause. There we go. I didn't know how long that brain fart was gonna last. But when we think of help, like when I was thinking of help, I was originally thinking like asking people around me because fortunately for them, most situations, if a person is around me, if they need help with, I'm usually able to help. But that is something that I learned. Society loves to praise that because that's the people that they rob blind every single day. But in reality, that's very dangerous because humans still have instincts. They still have a lot of passed down traits that, especially if people are not interested in anything related to human behavior, they're not going to be aware that a lot of things that people do, it's in us to do it. But the whole point of therapy is to make you conscious of your doing of it and to prevent you from doing it when especially things that are destroying your life. Building a self-sustained ecosystem. But I also learned back about the health thing. I also realized that they have programs for everything. All of the previous videos, or most of them, especially the first few, I have links to 211, which is in America, that's stuff that get Americans in need connected to the resources they need help with. And they have specific categories they assist with, like medical, food, housing, education, senior care, and mental health as well. And I think it might be other stuff. Those types of things are the help I rock with. And I'm always shocked about the people not knowing about those things. But after living long enough, I see that they don't know about those things because they get their help from other people. They don't get it from the stuff that's there for them. And I typically, the times I ever needed people was probably me making a mistake that blew up too big. Because outside of that, with daily life, regular life, I rarely need help for stuff because I I try to be responsible, I would say. Like I think I try everything instead of claiming too early, but I definitely am responsible with most things that people, like when it came to the stuff that I could think about people needing help with, it would be the bills after they blew the money on something they wasn't supposed to, or it would be pretending that it was bills, but it really was for something else, a concert, a outfit, things like that. So with those people, those same people get online and will cry when they feel like there's no one they can call on, and they'll tell that story that they call on everyone, but they don't have anyone to call on. Those people be lying because people who actually live like that is not going to be online saying that and going through stuff forever. But anyways, then and especially now I go above and beyond to keep a self-sustained ecosystem because throughout history, every time I lost self-sustainability, it was usually because I sacrificed too much help to help someone who would not think twice about me outside of being in need or giving fake admiration. They did not love me. They loved access. They loved my car. They loved my time. They loved my listening ear. They loved my ability to figure things out or the fact that I stay calm in chaos. that I could be useful without making too many demands. No demands, actually. I've always been sentimental to where I like people for people. I've never had a person that had a sole purpose for me. Like it wasn't a person, oh, I'm gonna call this person so I can get something free, or this person work here, or I've never done that. I've even had times where I would be applying for jobs where people I knew worked there already. I wouldn't even tell them because that's not their load to bear. And I think that's why I've grown differently than a lot of the people around me because since childhood, every lesson and mistake I've made, I've sat with. Like I've always been that way. And when you do that, you learn from things and you start to prevent things from happening. Like if you someone who feel like you always having car trouble, when you step your game up on your knowledge with vehicles, you can lower that percentage so low that the things that do happen, you can fix it yourself, male or female. Because it's always wild when people try to put things off on the other gender when they're single or when there's like no possibility that they're going to be with a stable person around in any form, that they're going to have a male to fix things or a woman to cook and clean things. So it's like every gender needs to know how to do both things. But I find people are mostly just horny. Like it's just a whole secret world of freaks out there, and the people on the internet still have that Disney mask on their head of thinking that when people tell them it's a wild world out there that is negative or cynical. But the dark web begs to differ, baby. And not even just that, like them adult websites for people who go to parties, like it's prevalent. So yeah, it's just way too many people out there in the background living grimy, like making regular people feel bad about who they are. And it's just hilarious to me because never mind. And being needed is not the same as being valued. Being praised while being drained is still exploitation with a compliment attached. Some people will call you amazing while treating you like an appliance. They will say, I do not know what I would do without you. Well, everyone had to learn that lesson now. They will call you strong because it benefits them to pretend you are unbreakable. They will call you dependable because that sounds nicer than saying available. They will admire the very traits they are exhausting. And that is why self sustainability became sacred to me because once you know how quickly people can turn your generosity into a utility bill that they never pay, you start protecting your power differently. Also, for me, all of these references to past things are not present feelings. That is me channeling who I was going through those things, what I learned while going through those things, and then also at the end of the experience, giving what I've learned then and what I've learned now and what I'm still learning because learning is forever, baby. Like that's why your brain is a muscle because when you stop using it, it shrivels up, word to biceps, and you're gonna learn the rest of your life. And that's why it's just a chair you sit down in and get comfortable. It's not a race you run to do it fast as possible. But I'm disconnected from all of these things because implementing these things in my life makes these situations not possible anymore. And it's a better thing to be experienced personally versus me going into full detail because what it does is make people believe that if their experience doesn't fit the points that my experience fit, that their experience is null and void, and I don't like encouraging that. That's why I actually took down my little lifestyle vlog era because the amount of people who get that fear of missing out feeling when they see people doing things, like the furthest I'll go currently, unless something change, is maybe cooking. And that is to encourage people to eat at your damn house. I just got a purchased a whole rack of ribs for they were a dollar something per pound. I purchased a whole pack of ribs for three something when most places around here, any rib dish starts at $28 and it's for short ribs. and it's probably six, sometimes eight for over $30, which that is understandable. I've always understood the cost. However, I believe that stay we need to really accept what lane we're currently in and kind of stay in that lane, because all of this luxury adjacent living people are attempting to do is really taking a lot of money away from them, and these things are not bringing enjoyment. The people doing these things do not enjoy it. If anything, is more customer service issues, awkward moments with other patrons, and things of that nature. But let's see, human life is still the jungle. You know what, these like things be so long that I literally don't have it in my head, because if you knew how long it take for me to write this, and then me when I get it, when I proofread it, I fight to keep my tone, because proofreading, I don't like that, because I actually write, so I try to keep my tone and things. But the fact that I had just started mentioning about humans being, human nature and stuff, and this is the section, it's crazy how I'm in alignment with my earlier self who wrote the script and proofread it. Reality, education, and experience have proven to me that human life is still as wild as the jungle. We like to dress it up with manners, titles, group chats, family reunions, birthday dinners, church clothes, inspirational captions, and good vibes only. But underneath all of that, there are still predators, there are still scavengers, there are still people who can smell weakness, excess, insecurity, guilt, loneliness, grief, and low boundaries. Especially, baby, the low boundaries that give yourself away every single day. Like, that's why silence would help a lot of people when you're entering new environments. If you learn to naturally stop speaking, and if you do respond with open-ended questions to get the other party speaking more, or given that many is more common that you have people who like talking, let them people talk and kind of fill them out, and also fill out your nervous system, because but that's in a different section. I'm not going to jump the gun with that one. And some people do not respond to kindness with gratitude. They respond to kindness like blood in the water. Gross. That does not mean you become cold. It means you stop bleeding around sharks and calling it generosity, because human behavior can get primitive fast. Let someone entitled feel entitled. Let someone feel rejected. Let someone feel like they're losing access, or realize the old version of you is no longer available. You will see how quickly the polite costume comes off. And that is why discernment matters. Not paranoia, not discernment, not paranoia, but discernment. Paranoia says everyone is dangerous. Discernment says, let me watch what people do with access. Yeah, as simple as that. Because in many situations, it may feel like a person switched up on you all of a sudden, but during that silent time that most people skip and they overfill it with stimulation, you will see that there were signs indeed. It's very few people, like, you have to be dealing with a psychopath, like a true psychopath, not one that the word is thrown around because the person just gives such a dangerous feeling. But it would take like a high level person in the mental area to be able to not have any signs. And a lot of the people that people say that didn't show them signs, they showed them multiple. That yeah. So kindness with no boundaries becomes a disaster. The overgiver and the manipulator. Kindness is amazing within reason and with intention, but reckless distribution of your resources around people in vampire mode. Also, another pause. This is charity work because, as I mentioned like two sections ago, that I'm disconnected from all of these things. So, me digging in the ground and getting old things to unpack, that's for people who probably are still going through it, because it's a super common thing. Like, all of the things we see people go through online, and when people in the comments drag them, Every single person, if they've been in public, has communicated with people who've been through the things that they are calling other people stupid for. So, but reckless distribution of your resources around people in vampire mode is a recipe for disaster. And when I say resources, it doesn't mean just money, even though money is common, but and that's how people get caught up, because if it's not material things, you think is all good because they never asked you for anything. I mean, your sleep, your attention, peace, vehicle, home, reputation, nervous system, opportunities, job stability, emotional bandwidth. Because when you have people constantly pulling at you, you have very little energy for the things that you need to do. And that's why it's easy for people to neglect things to go be there for someone, even though now your journey has been tainted, because in the future you're going to have obstacles that were created by your present day neglect. With the devil's busy, like they say. Your ability to dream without interruptions. Some people will drain things from you that you cannot even replace. That is the dangerous part. They can take your time, but cannot give you back the years. Borrow your peace, but they cannot repay your nervous system. Use your name, but cannot always repair your reputation. Ask you for help, but they may not care what helping them costs you. And when you have no boundaries, people do not always respect you more because you are generous. Sometimes they respect you because you are too available. That is a painful truth. Some people value what has a gate, what has a price, appreciate what they can lose. Give When you give without limits, they don't see a heart, they see an opening. And that is where it comes into play. Like, you people typically question everything when they are broken, of whether it was this or whether it was that. You may or may not know that. Like, you may or may not know if the person using you unconsciously is in survival mode, and that's their go-to for survival, especially if they were taught that as a child. If family members had them lying for different things constantly, those behaviors starting that early, it's like that's why people who have kids, you have to be careful the different things you're letting them be aware of. Or if they see the stuff, you have to identify it and draw the line with them and let them know, hey, this is wrong. And if you have them doing it, let them know why you're having them do it in this situation, but to never do that in life. But people just copying and pasting their upbringing with kids, and that's why, it's not really anything that's going to be done right now. That's a fact. It ain't gonna change right now. Like, in this moment, I'm recording this video. Haha. People always try to argue. It's not. It's not. Well, that was the wrong section. Oh well. There is not one overgiver I have seen with my two eyes and a cataract that has had a clean history. Overgiving usually has roots. It may come from childhood, being parentified, which is having to be the voice of reason as a kid to grown adults. Trauma, being praised only when you're useful. Sometimes it comes from growing up around chaos and learning that if you could keep everyone else stable, maybe you will finally feel safe. I don't know if the viewer is aware of this, but it is a lot of people out there who parents, caregivers, sometimes friends, maybe even lovers, only are loving to them when they give to them. Like, you literally have to give money or pay a bill or do something in a completely different household, by the way, before you get that. And some people, that's why when they make connections with people, they're always giving, because their parent taught them that if you keep giving to people, they'll eventually love you, and that if you stop giving, they'll stop loving you. And from that, being a parent or caregiver displaying that behavior, it's normal, because if that's all you know in your reality, that is why for me, I have understanding that people may not be aware of things coming from being around people like that. But all of these crowns people trying to carry. Oh, you're a macho man, or you're a soft woman, or you're this, you're that. When you get to that point, that's when I'm looking at you like you should know better, because you're claiming to be this person in this position, and or you don't. But on the contrary, there are also manipulators who use giving as their Venus flytrap. They give to trap, to control, guilt trip later. They give so they can say, after all I did for you. So when you are a genuine overgiver, sometimes people mistake you for having a motive. Also, too, they have people who use giving as a trap, and they'll give you something or do stuff for you that you didn't even ask for. And it don't even really be a benefit, but they know you're an overgiver and you that super nice person because you following all of these morals that they taught that only good people follow, because the people, or the perceived good people follow, are the people who actually have some type of compassion in their heart follow, because the people who benefiting from it, they don't follow none of that stuff they tell people, especially the it's better to give than to receive. If I had $1 of debt every time a user said that phrase, or a user said some type of phrase that contradicts the way they maneuver, I would file bankruptcy, because $1 of debt for every time I heard that would mean that I would be millions of dollars in debt. No bad. Because in their world, no one gives without a hidden invoice. And when they realize you do not have one, they respond in one of two ways. They either genuinely bond with you, or they start thinking they found a winning slot machine with no entry fee. And the latter is the more common for me. I always see the change in the times during my scientific era, when I would be casual with people, and then we would come to a point where either we hungry or something is needed. And in them situations, if it's transportation or food, like I really believe that if people need that, I would look out for them in those moments. But you will always see where they go from appreciating it to expecting it, because once they expecting it started expecting it, the whole dynamic and the whole way that they operated, it was not the same no more. It went from you could actually have normal conversations with them to every conversation led up to a favor, like in all cases. So yeah, for me, they and that is why genuine kindness needs wisdom, because not everybody is suspicious of your kindness because they are evil. Some people are suspicious because they have only seen kindness used as bait, and not everyone accepts your kindness with gratitude. Some people accept it as permission to take more. The overgiver and the manipulator can look similar from a distance because both give, but the difference is intention. The overgiver gives to be useful, connected, safe, and loving. The manipulator gives to create debt. One gives from an open hand, the other gives with the hook inside of it. And a lot of people fall prey to the manipulator and the giving of the manipulator because the chase for wealth and status, it has people so blind that they are not becoming aware of all of the needs of a human. Like people be pet owners, the ones that's actually decent, and can learn all of the needs of their pet, but don't realize they need that same treatment and checks and things like that as well. But the difference is intention, and the winning slot machine with no entry fee. Is not an order again? No, it be skipping so fast like StreamYard. Are you okay? Annie, are you okay? That is what I became for some people. A machine. Pull a lever, get a favor. Pull a lever, get advice. Pull a lever, get money. Pull a lever, get a ride. Vroom vroom. Skirt. Hellcats, SRTs. Well, I'm more Ford Fusions, SEs. Pull the lever, get advice. And even with the advice, like the cap in people rap, when people will know that you either are aware of something or you're studying something or you have a passion for something, they will fake ask you for advice about it just to build up cool points like on the Sims game. So that when they do, need something in the future, they can try to reference that moment as, look, I was trying, lion ass. Lion ass. Pull the lever, get emotional support. That's another thing. People become so accustomed to getting outside emotional support that they become codependent on everything. Every single miscommunication, bad work day, bad restaurant experience, they always have to call people. They never sit with it on their own. Do as much resolution if it's an ongoing issue themselves, and then maybe discuss it with they people, like, hey, let me put you on game. This and this happened the other day, but this is how I solved it. I looked this up and I found this out and I did this and this. That's how people learn. If you think about yourself or people you know who have had to solve complex situations, either as a homeowner, as a vehicle owner, as an employee with work related issues, they remember exactly what it took to get there. And their information, it always comes to them like that when it comes to someone else having the issue, or if they have the issue again, or they become aware of things when it comes to mechanic shops or companies that may be red flags. And because I was not charging admission, they assumed the game was free, but nothing was free. I was paying with sleep, money, delayed goals, stress, opportunities, paying with pieces of myself I did not even realize were being deducted. And here is the part that will humble you. Sometimes people do not notice the cost because they're not the one being charged. They can keep pulling the lever because the machine is not plugged into their account. It is plugged into yours, your gas tank, calendar, mind, house, workplace, name, future. And when you finally unplug it, they act shocked, not because they did not know they were taken, but because they thought the power source belonged to them. And what makes it even worse is that these people are walking liabilities in some situations. Like, they legit be having warrants, and God forbid you ride places with them, they might have contraband on them that they're not supposed to have. They get into it with people on social media in y'all city, so you going places with them and they got plex with people, male or female. Like, isn't and then they always try to, in some instances, will always repeat their traumas and their struggles because they know that you are an empath without boundaries, which is so dangerous for you, so beneficial for them, though. Studying people while they thought I was unaware, which honestly, younger me kind of used to overshare my insight on things. So people knew what I was capable of, but they just was like, oh, well, he see me as a friend or he see me as a family member. So it doesn't matter. I have free reign. God forbid if someone in the streets did it. Oh, nobody in the streets better ever play with you. Yeah, because that's your job, right? And I actually enjoyed some of my interactions with people who were performing. They thought I was unaware, but I was studying. I was watching their tactics, adding information to my awareness database, comparing behavior across personalities, watching patterns. That is how I became able to predict people's responses so quickly. I don't assume, I observe, I compare, I hypothesize. I consider ever changing variables. Some people call that overthinking. Well, people who don't use their brain see any form of compare, contrast, pattern recognizing, hypothesizing as overthinking because all of their thoughts have already been pre written by someone else, depending on what topic it is. Some people call that overthinking. I call it pattern recognition with receipts. I watch how people change their voice depending on who's in the room, how they left certain details out, how they tested boundaries in certain in small ways before making bigger requests, especially the borrowing small amounts of money frequently to build up to the large amounts. And then usually that's what either they disappear, the friendship ends, or, all kinds of other things. I watch how they praise me right before they ask for something, especially that when people are about to beg you, even if it's a man, their voice goes up a few octaves, and it's so it's so funny how when people are living unconsciously, when they do things, they have the stereotypical manner of executing it. I watch how some people only became warm when they need access. How some people disappear when I was stable but appear when I was useful. Especially if it like was accomplishments, which we so sick of Jay New Orleans. He always accomplishing something. Yeah, it's something that if a person really don't know themselves, it'll make you either continue doing things to better yourself and continue being used just by different people, or maybe even going through a loner period. And instead of using that period to rediscover yourself, some people fall into addiction during that loner period. And it isn't always the usual suspects. And that's what makes the addiction that are not the common things that people are addicted to dangerous, because you underestimate the fact that you could be addicted to it because of what it is. Or what the people do is sometimes they may stunt their growth just to fit in with these people. And then they'll end up falling out with the person later on after a ridiculous amount of years and feel stupid because of that and regret and not charging it to the game. Because one thing about this life, like you don't change what happened, but you can change what happened if you know what I mean. No, I watched I learned that behavior has a rhythm, manipulation has tells, entitlement has a scent, and guilt trips have a script. They really do. I love guilt trips. I love when people try them on me, especially present day. Like I love when people try any form of psychological warfare, because it's always so laughable, because I genuinely just don't respond, because in all situations they want some kind of response from you, whether it's a positive response or they trying to get you out the box or out of pocket. And that way they can immediately act like you're overreacting or try to give you some type of title of having a behavior that they usually display. It's very strange, but I never give people what they want. Just give them what they need. Red Cross. I never knew that asking detailed question based on variables was unique. When people recap stories to me, I would always have follow-up questions based on the information they gave, because I'm an active listener. And I honestly, if I'm talking to people, I have a reason. I do not speak without a reason. Younger me was a little bit more chatty, but I still had reasons. Like if they said someone had an attitude, I would ask, was the air conditioning working? Were they hungry? Were they in pain? Had they been treated badly before you walked in? Do they treat everybody like that or just certain people? Were they overwhelmed? Now, these questions, did you say something before they responded? What happened right before the attitude? These questions, I'm not asking that as soon as you tell me something happened. This is me after it became a repeat issue. This is the fourth phone call about your manager. This is the fifth phone call about your boyfriend, girlfriend, cousin, mama, auntie, daddy, friend. Because at that point, I need to see why it's a repeat issue, because it's starting to look like either it looks a little murky, and I don't make assumptions. That's why I'm asking more questions, because if I'm asking more questions, then something's not adding up and I'm trying to add it up. Did you say something before they responded? What happened right before the attitude? Because I always wanted enough details to feel like I was on the scene. I did not want the trailer. I wanted the full documentary, but that makes people feel uncomfortable, especially if they trying to keep the narrative close. They're definitely going to not want to discuss certain things, and depending on who you are and what they see you as, if you're someone that they see as sensible, they're definitely going to keep details away, because a lot of people do not want context. They want emotional agreement. They want you to react to the version of the story that makes them look innocent. They want you to hand you a movie poster and have you review the whole film. Shout, isn't that what they said in one of them trials, that the actress lied about reading the book that the movie about and lied about reading the script? And when you ask for the missing scene, suddenly you're doing too much. But details matter, variables matter, context matters. And that's another thing too with emotional people. They always give themselves away when they lying because the emotions become overwhelming, or the cortisol and adrenaline make them start having nervous tics and stuff. Because without context, we are not analyzing reality. We are just reacting to somebody's emotional editing. And some people are excellent editors. I want to meet someone. I've always wanted to meet people, other people who make my brain work and not make my brain scream. They know how to cut out the part where they provoke the situation. They know how to zoom in on the other person's reactions. They know how to add sad music over their own choices. They know how to make themselves the victim, director, producer, and narrator. That is why I ask questions, not because I am cold. That is a good reputation to have though, as being cold. Like, because I respect truth more than performance. Word to Iceman. Emotional storytelling versus reality based context. A lot of draining people will tell stories with emotion tugging details, but leave out the structure. They'll tell you how they felt. They'll always tell you how they felt. They'll tell you who hurt them. They'll tell you who betrayed them, who was wrong, but they leave out timing. They leave out their role. They leave out what happened before, what happened. They leave out the repeated pattern. Well, they leave out the repeated pattern because people do not. People only see patterns in other people. They don't see them in themselves. Unfortunately, in these instances, like people in question that fit this little narrative that we're discussing, because the video is about the job that you never asked for, because it really has taken each section and made a house out of brick to show just each layer and impact that these have on a person's life. And just imagine the all of these things we discussing is dealing with people. This is not including what you have to deal with, or whoever has to deal with in life. Like, it's baby. And but I mean, and then always seeing it as a lot. Like, we have to get to a point to where we match our baseline. Like, if our baseline is always chaotic, if we always running behind, we always have stuff to do, at some point we either have to take some stuff off the plate, or we have to get some better shoes on to step up to the plate. Because it's really not helping anyone to have a life like that, because you're not making progress. You may actually be on a decline, and not to mention, you are more vulnerable to predators, like, scammers, people who may enter your life and do things to you, like we see in so many news articles of people entering people's lives for however many years, months, days, and hitting them up in any way. They tell you who was wrong, but they leave out the time and they leave out their role, what happened before, the repeated pattern, the warning signs they ignored. They also leave out the part where five people told them the stove was hot and they still put their hands on the burner. And if you ask too many clarifying questions, suddenly you're not supportive. No, sometimes support sounds like, I need more information before I help you build a false reality, because emotional storytelling can be powerful, but it can also be misleading. Plain pain, see, spirit must be talking about me. Plain pain does not automatically make someone accurate. Tears do not automatically make someone honest. Being hurt does not mean you had no role, and being loud does not mean you are telling the truth. A person can be genuinely upset and still be wrong, wounded and still be manipulative, cry and still be leaving out evidence. That is why discernment is so important. You can have compassion for someone's feelings without being an employee of their version of events. And bless y'all heart for the people who still dealing with this. Baby, them people, after a while, it hurt to see the phone ring with their name on it. A text message takes a deep breath, or sometimes you can't even read their messages immediately, especially if you having a good vibe. You like, oh no, I'm gonna have to talk to them later. And then them kind of people, but like, try to force communication whenever they need to vent. Like, it's very strange, because a lot of the times they need to vent, but they are the smoke. So it's like, anyways. The life altering wake up call. One of the biggest realizations I had came during a life altering event. I should do a whole segment on those. I had something happen where my life and leg were hanging in the balance. No pun intended. I promised myself I wasn't gonna laugh when I read that part. That's the dark humor in me. Like anytime stuff has happened in life, I've always made a joke out of it because I was already experiencing it. It was already a negative. Whatever resources, options to resolve it were already taken because that's just how I am. So I'm gonna laugh. I'm not about to be that person who are gonna let past things be the luggage that I carry on my back for the rest of my life. No, 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 no. And do you know what people were still doing? Asking me for favors. That was the villain. That was really the villain origin story. Once I saw that, not the down and out I thought of the past of just a financial loss or employment loss or temporary loss of housing or stuff like that. Baby, being like dying, being dead for however long, and then coming back and not knowing if you're going to have a limb get removed, and to be dealing with that, and then the aftermath of that, which is way more gory, and people being aware of a smidgen of those things, which a smidgen of that was horrific and was too much to even for me to discuss at the time, and to have people asking me for money, favors, gossiping when I'm telling them, like, because I always set the expectation with people, and that's what make it worse for me. My past situations is that I've always been a person to set the expectation. Working at customer service, starting at the age of 14, I really took customer service seriously because it made me feel good, making people feel good. So setting expectations is a part of me, and especially in personal connections. I feel like because I have to. Like when I work when I was on the ship, setting the expectation that I'm gonna be gone for a month. That way anyone decides to randomly reach out, people who bored start going through their phone and reaching out to people they never talked to, or maybe people who in need. I'm letting you know I'm not available for this whole month. So get somebody else to do it. And in them situations, like me setting expectations with people, in the long story medium, setting expectations never prevented backlash or fallout from things. People just, I don't know. I can't speak for each situation, but what I will say is when you dealing with people that are not on your level, because we always changing levels, that's on you. That's why these long-term connection things, you really got to know how to balance them out if you really want to be somebody's friend for a long time relationships and things like that, because people only think of the current moment. You don't think about how their current state, or the state that they're, like, the changes they're not making, how that's going to impact y'all on the long term. And you can't love people through those things, especially when you have people who are ducking self-worth and they have explosive and emotional ways. You're playing with fire, and especially if you're running with people who have social media accounts, or if you're related to people who have social media accounts, you have to understand, especially if they have a history of having social media spats, that will be you one day. You will be on the other side of that. Or if it's someone who always throwing subliminals, you thinking that the 20, 30 years you've known this person means that they're a loving person. If y'all made it to 20, 30, 40, and you're around people who still have these destructive ways, just know your day is coming, and some of y'all be on y'all third and fourth makeup with people. So, you know, but just know that while you're dealing with these people, this is time, money, energy, health, happiness that you're sacrificing. And once your life is without this person, either due to death, either y'all get tired of each other, you have just wasted all of this time. And the lesson is to just don't do it again. It's not to grieve over the past, because us as humans, like, we get it how we live. And I'll start over because I don't want to just start reading this again and start where I left off because it's gonna kind of dilute the point. But yeah, I had something happen where my life and leg were hanging in the balance, no pun intended. Insert laugh, like I did earlier. And you know what people were still doing? Asking me for favors, venting, spreading gossip. Somebody actually stole some flowers out of my hospital, and not by anyone I know. The hospital actually misplaced my car keys, passport, all kinds of important stuff. Thankfully, I only had a $5 bill in my wallet. Bringing drama, and in some cases stealing from my hospital room, that will make you look at life differently, because there is something spiritually sobering about lying there physically broken, realizing that some people still see you as a resource before they see you as a person. That is when the fantasy starts to crack. The idea that if I'm good to people, they will be good to me starts looking like a Disney movie with no budget for reality, because reality has a way of removing the soft lighting. Reality will show you who checks on you, who uses you, who competes with your pain, who is inconvenienced by your suffering, who disappears when you're not useful, who only knows how to receive but not show up. And sometimes that the most painful part of a life altering event is not the injury, it's the clarity. Also, too, being on social media will give you that false sense of community. Like, there are people who will do things for you and people who are random acts of kindness type good Samaritans, but being on a timeline every day where you laughing and keying with all these different people, especially if they local, you would think that, oh, if I have a birthday, I got 1,000 followers on. No, that'd be the worst. The hospital room test. The hospital was a test a lot of people failed, not because I expected perfection, not because I expected anyone to save me, because no one could save me in that situation. I was the only one who could save myself. Not because I needed a parade, but because even when I was at my lowest, some people still found a way to take. And that is a special kind of revelation, because if someone can watch you suffer and still center themselves, that is information. If someone can see you broken and still ask, can you do something for me? That is information. Matter of fact, or if you, me, Jay New Orleans, with my previously dumbass, making trips just for events, just for celebrations, just for funerals, just especially if a person is down, going to cities for that. And no, like, I didn't matter to no one for many local people and nobody from out of town, even when they were passing through New Orleans, to send a card, send anything. Like, it was one person that really showed up in my personal life, and the rest of the people who came there bought drama, theft, weirdness. Like, honestly, it's not even shocking, but it made me realize, when you are deep in life, like I was for many years, from between making money and having fun, because it was like that mindset: work hard, play harder. I would laugh after work was finished, like, work hard, play harder. But it really distracted me so much that I've been peeped that stuff wasn't right with people, but I never peeped the extent of it. It's kind of like this string. You see this string. Well, you can't see it because it's way over here. You see this string that is running. Run away, love. But you don't, like, you see this. But if I showed you that this is a 6 foot cord, you would be like, oh, where does it end? That's the reference point of me being aware that things were not right with them. But I also saw it as they don't mean no harm, or recognizing what they went through in their childhood and feeling like, oh, well, people need love, but those people that need love don't give love. That's really the realization. Like, all of this lovey-dovey Axe body spray after the gym type stuff, it don't get you nowhere. And you want to be selfless, but when you look around, these people is living out for you. And it's so funny because instead of them using it to be better people, they use it to stay stagnant. Like, it's amazing. And if someone can see you broken and still ask, can you do something for me? That is information. If someone can walk into your vulnerable season, still gossip, still demand or drain, that is information. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That kind of moment becomes a dividing line. This is life before you knew, life after you could no longer pretend. Because the hospital room showed me something I could not explain away. It showed me that some people had only built a relationship with my function, not my humanity. They knew what I could do, what I could provide, how I could listen, how I could help, but they did not know how to honor me when I had nothing to give. And that tells you everything. It really does. And it really what it made me do most of all is like when it comes to actual information, I love sharing information with people, especially informed people. Information sharing is not you telling me something you saw somebody else say with no proof, or something that you believe in that you don't even know where the belief came from, but just because it's a group of people that believe that, like, those kinds of people cannot tell me anything. And these situations showed me how people can quickly advise you, giving grace and all of these different weak ass things they tell you to do. But when people used to put me through things, or think I'd be in situations with people, the people who recommended the bad advice never soothed me through that. Are people who give you recommendations on what you need to do. They never tried to be support during that resolution, since they so strongly felt like that was the route I needed to take. Me, on the other hand, that's one trait I still possess, and the fact that I'm telling y'all some of my traits is why, baby, our YouTube connections would be a conflict of interest, because you got to learn me bit by bit in real life. And even on here, these different factors I'm saying, don't get it twisted. You still don't know me. Word to Ti. And when I was bedridden for months, I had time, too much time. Oh, but what I was saying, as far as people cannot tell me nothing, I definitely, and that's one thing about maturing and growing into being an adult, a real adult, is that you know what works for you, you know what didn't work for you, especially in repeat environments. Like New Orleans and Houston, baby, I could run New Orleans and Houston with my eyes closed, because these are two cities I've spent two pieces of my life, like half and half, really, living there. And both I've been adults navigating those places. But I also know that random people is not going to have advice, especially people who just giving you unsolicited advice. People who give unsolicited, damn braces, unsolicited advice. That's the same people who are in the comment section, like, debating facts, factual information. When I was bedridden for months, I had time, too much time. I look back through my iPhone messages going back to 2014, when I met you in the summer. Dun, 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 till my heartbeat sound. Dun, dun, dun. That was the song of that year. That was not just scrolling, that was an audit. I saw the encouraging words, requests for favors, demanding for event attendance, pressure to support businesses, people attacking me after I had only helped them, repeated betrayals from the same people because they were family. The old programming said, Mommy and Daddy say you must deal with them. But when I looked at the timeline from 2014 to the year that all of that stuff happened, I noticed something painful. A majority of the hiccups I experienced were preventable. Had I not stretched myself, vehicle funds, homes, employment, mental health, and in some cases, reputation, a lot of these problems would not have happened. And the hardest part, it meant nothing to the people who benefited. And the crazier part is that a lot of those people, had you said no sooner, you would have got rid of that problem earlier. They were just waiting on the first no. As long as you was yes, 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 yes. Like, and it's so wild, because if, especially when it be a person that you put in a role they didn't deserve, and you have to tell them no one time, and more than likely you didn't even want to tell them no. It always be the situation that you really was down bad in, that you couldn't provide, and that person just unleash the dragon on your ass. And the hardest part, it meant nothing to people who benefited. That is a bitter truth. Sometimes the sacrifice that almost destroys you is just a Tuesday to the person receiving it. That message audit became a mirror. It showed me receipts I didn't even know I had. It showed me patterns I had emotionally normalized. It is actually alarming when you look at past things, especially 5+ years in the past. And it's like, what the hell? That is why I encourage growth. Y'all should be addicted to growth. That's the addiction people need. Addiction to growth, but also addiction to inner self work so that you can enjoy this world more because life is meant to be enjoyed. You are able to get to a point where you may not even look at the things that bother you now the same. For me, traffic used to be kryptonite to me. Traffic, looking and seeing red on a Google map would send me into outer space. Like now, as long as it's not evacuation, like you ain't moving at all, which is a waste of time type traffic, I'm good. If I can get somewhere within a decent amount of time, I'm good. And once you see a decade of your life laid out like that, you cannot keep calling it random. At some point, repetition becomes evidence. That's even funnier because I hadn't read that part yet, but I said it. Overgiving does not always look dramatic while it's happening. Sometimes it looks like being a dependable one, the strong friend, understanding, like giving somebody one more chance, like letting family slide because that's just how they are. It looks like showing up tired, like spending money you should have saved. Ooh, ooh. You don't know the pain I've been through. I wish I could sing seriously. I'd be laughing, man. But that hit, baby. When I tell you, if I was to have access to bank statements of Christmas past, not even really Christmas, because y'all don't know me to know I just be the way I do that when I do that, but of past bank statements and to see the depositing into savings, the boom, 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 throwing them savings down. Cause pre-financial literacy, I thought savings was the be all. And then I have to withdraw it because somebody needed me. They needed me. They needed me. It's crazy. It's I laugh at it now though. It ain't even regret no more. But it was a memory unlocked when that happens. Sometimes it looks like saying yes because saying no will create an argument you do not have the energy for. But over time the bill comes. And when the bill comes, it has interest. Lost sleep, delayed goals, financial strain, health issues, bitterness, anxiety, resentment, opportunity loss, and the quiet grief of realizing you abandon yourself to keep people comfortable. That grief is real because you're not only grieving people, you're grieving versions of yourself. The version who could have left sooner, who could have taken the opportunity, who could have rested, who could have built something, who could have avoided certain problems, who could have had peace earlier. That is one of the hidden costs of over giving. Eventually, you have to meet the life you might have had if you had protected yourself. That is why I love that I let myself fall into bitterness. Like when they tell you sit with emotions, you sit with it but you sit with it with intentions. During my bitterness era, it was completely secret. It was still business as usual on the outside because social media taught me about being so good with the mask that people don't seem to ask, where's the flask? And once I sat through with that bitterness and was able to rise above it, it made me more understanding of bitterness in others, what causes bitterness, and how blinding it could be at times because it can jump out. Bitterness for somebody else could jump out in a different situation. Somebody with the same name, somebody that wear the same perfume, so it trigger you, and now you in the mood and don't even realize it. Financial illiteracy and emotional spending. I also blame financial illiteracy because if I had one real lesson about money, resources, and opportunity costs, I would have never played with my resources in that manner. Nobody taught me that every dollar has a job, every favor has a cost, every yes is a no to something else. When you give somebody money you need it, you're not just giving money. You may be giving away a bill payment, a savings goal, repair, business idea, class, relocation, a rest day, a cushion that could protect you from your own emergency. I did that too many times. I can't imagine. I mean, I can't I can't describe. I was speechless, still speaking. But man, that hit when I tell you to be in a situation that may only cost 100 or 200 to fix, but it really got you down bad as long as the situation is active, and to know that you gave double, triple that to different people who never paid you back or who misrepresented the need, man, it's crazy. Especially because you do yourself a disservice when you leveling up around stagnant people because now you become the the funder of the group. Like whether you know that or not, especially if you overshare, like it's normal for people to share with their friends and loved ones about where you working at or sometimes even pay rate. Baby, you sharing bread around a bunch of hungry birds, angry birds at that. A cushion that could protect you from your own emergency. I was there. I remember it all too well. At least with that song, I didn't need too much. A cushion, financial literacy is not just knowing how to budget, it is knowing that your resources are not community property just because someone else has a crisis. It is knowing the difference between compassion and self sabotaging. It is knowing that broke people can still financially abuse generous people. And it is knowing that a person can be in need and still not be entitled to your survival money because money is not just money. Money is options, mobility, safety, time, the ability to leave, the ability to say no, the ability to repair what breaks, the ability to rest when your body needs rest. So when you keep giving away money because of guilt, you may also be giving away your freedom. And some of us were never taught that. We were taught to be nice, taught to share, taught to help family, to support friends, but we were not taught how to identify when support turns into financial self harm. 211, phone a friend and redirecting the crisis. Had I known better, I would have found out about 211 and every out like that's the downside about this camera moving with me is that when I'm adjusting it, baby, I don't need you to move. I should turn that off, but I'm not. Anyways, had I known better, I would have found out about 211 and referred every beggar and Ben from here down I-10 to call 211. Word to who wants to be a millionaire, phone a friend. And in many cases, the friend was not supposed to be me. There are hotlines, community resources, social services, therapists, caseworkers, legal aid, employee right resources, housing resources, food assistance, domestic violence resources, addiction support resources, financial counseling. But when people get used to you being the first call, they stop looking for actual systems. Also, because the brain wired for comfort and ease. The fact that it's so easy to like you almost like just pressing it in the phone because you they press a few buttons in the phone, they get you on the line, and then ding, problem solved like a genie, a magic iPhone, and you become the system, and that is dangerous because you are one person. You cannot be everyone's therapist, emergency fund, Uber, landlord, crisis manager, motivational speaker, mediator, and unpaid life coach. And people don't even tip. That's the crazy part. They don't tip, and in some of the cases, and that's because the people be so screwed up with the dynamic you've allowed for so long where they don't even think about you in that manner. Like whenever they breaking bread, it's not gonna be with you. You're the bread person. It's kind of like if a person go to the ATM, except for Bank of America, most ATMs don't take money. They only give money. And that's what they see people who are reliable as the thing to be taken from, not the thing to be given to. They have appointment times, they have cancellation policies, boundaries, can refer clients out, can end treatment when necessary. Somehow, in personal relationships, people expect unlimited access with no structure, no payment, no accountability. and no end time. And that is not love, that is emotional trespassing. Sometimes the most loving thing you can say is, I am not equipped for this, but here is a resource. Sometimes the boundary is the bridge. Sometimes redirecting people to real help is better than letting them keep pretending you're a professional crisis center with a personal phone bill. And let's be honest, some people do not want resources because resources come with structure. They want you because you come with guilt. And not to mention, you also have to question yourself without guilt as to why these people are able to do this with me. Like, especially because in some instances, those people be having trouble keeping friends and relationships. And it goes to show, and they go to make you feel special as to why you're still around, but you are special. You're a special tool. Don't be a fool. Guilt, bystanders, kids, elders, and pets. A lot of times I stay stuck in the job because of guilt. Not always guilt for the person causing the chaos, but guilt for the bystanders attached to them. If they had kids, elder parents, pets, or someone vulnerable getting the brunt of their misbehavior, I would stay near. I would try to shield them. I would try to patch up the wounds that the other person was actively creating. And that is a trap of a lot of overgivers fall into. You are not just trying to save the person, you're trying to save the damage around the person. But here is the painful truth: you cannot permanently protect people from someone they keep choosing, enabling, defending, returning to, or refusing to confront. Sometimes you can help, support, maybe even offer resources, but you cannot become a human sandbag for someone else's flood. Aquarium, eventually the water will reach you too. And that is when you have to ask the question no one wants to ask: am I helping or am I being used as a shield? More than likely, if you have to ask that question, you're being used as a shield. Bring back people who try to resolve the issue on their own as much as possible, and who also have their shoes on ready to push it to the finish line once you give them the boost, versus asking for the hover around to the finish line, but the hover around is your back. But destroying yourself because someone else refuses to stop creating harm is not sustainable. You can care about the children, the elders, the pets, the people affected, but your life cannot become a full-time cleanup crew for someone else's refusal to heal. And some people purposely get you connected with factors of their life like that because they know that that is something that keeps people around. Childhood programming and savior senses. This was formed in childhood, and I realized it was environmentally triggered. I have always functioned better around healthy people. I can connect with healthy people, build with healthy people, relax around healthy people. When I get around people in survival mode, poverty mindset, dysfunction, chaos, and low accountability, the savior senses start tingling. That is important because some people are not addicted to helping, they're triggered into helping. Their nervous system recognizes a dysfunction as familiar. They walk into a chaotic environment and do not say, this is unhealthy. They say, I know what to do here. That is not always love. Sometimes that is old programming recognizing an old battlefield. And when you grew up on instability, you may become skilled at reading rooms. You may become skilled at predicting moods, preventing explosions, calming people down, becoming whatever the moment requires. But those skills came from somewhere. Childhood trauma. And once you start healing, you'll realize that survival skills are not always life skills. Some of the things that helped you survive unhealthy environments will make you miserable in adulthood if you never learn when to put them down. Healthy environments, but see, that's the thing. It's hard to put it down because people leave childhood and then recreate the environments so that those traits that they never see a need to be put down. Healthy environments usually have boundaries. People communicate, people recover, people apologize, people plan, respect time, respect space. Do not make every feeling an emergency. Survival environments often have no boundaries and no self control. Everything is dramatic, everything is urgent, everything requires a group meeting, a phone call, a ride, a favor, a cash app, a rescue, or a witness. And that is why sometimes it feels easier to befriend people in places with lower moral. lower moral standards, not because the connection is healthier, but because the access is easier. Low boundary environments create fast intimacy. People tell you everything too quickly. They trauma dump. They bond through chaos. They mistake oversharing for closeness. They mistake crisis for support for loyalty. And before you know it, you're not in a friendship. You're in a rotating emergency room with snacks. Healthy environments can feel boring when chaos trains your body to feel useful. Peace can feel suspicious. Quiet can feel empty. Stable people can feel distant because they're not constantly pulling you into emergencies. But sometimes what you call lack of chemistry is actually the absence of dysfunction. Sometimes the connections feel less intense because nobody is bleeding on you. And that is not a bad thing. That is peace introducing itself. And some people will leave a friendship or a relationship, a developing one, because it's not enough friction and they start to question the validity of it. It's common thing. That's the thing. All of these different human natures and human behaviors, leaving beautiful people behind. While journeying through these connections, I noticed there were many others like me, other overgivers, other people pleasers, other people who were still in the fog. The difference was I started waking up and I had to leave some beautiful people behind, not because I did not care about them, but because their people pleasing had them driving themselves financially and mentally bankrupt, trying to keep up with appearances, trying to support everybody, trying to attend every event, trying to meet every obligation, avoiding being judged, dying to be good. But sometimes good to everyone else means being cruel to yourself. And there comes a point where you have to stop joining people in their self destruction just because you understand why they are doing it. That is one of the hardest parts about growth. You do not only outgrow toxic people, sometimes you outgrow wounded people who are still kind. You outgrow people you love, outgrow people who remind you of who you used to be. And it hurts because you can see their heart, you can see their potential, you can see the beautiful person underneath the conditioning, but you can also see the direction they're driving. And you have to decide whether love requires you to stay in the passenger seat while they head toward a cliff. Sometimes love means praying for people from a safer distance. And also notice that majority of the people before us lived in village type things. You had the people that live in the country, but a lot of people lived around other people, and the whole family was big on reputation. And usually you had the kids who free doing things that the family will click out about because don't mess up the reputation. But I mean, reputation matters, but not where you messing your life up for it. But you have to value your own life first. And that's the problem with help. Even if the people you're helping is not the people in these examples, it still can be pointless. That's like when people have given to the panhandlers and then they see them get in the car and their heart be broke because it's like you tricked me. I find it insane how some people still have costly events and pursue their friends and loved ones to attend birthdays, trips, weddings, showers, concerts, group dinners, matching outfits, destination events. Everyone is screaming, we're in a recession. Everyone is talking about layoffs, complaining about groceries, rent, insurance, gas, bills, inflation. But somehow the same people will pressure you to spend money you do not have to prove love, they do not even properly return to prove love. That is not celebration. That is financial hazing with decorations. And people need to start asking, does this event honor my life or does it interrupt my stability? Because love should not require you to overdraft. Ooh, friendship should actually, I think they probably made overdraft protection because of 18-year-old me. Because baby, the way I was over the draft, and shout out to a few of those Capital One and Bank of America customer service people who blessed the game and had then a few of my overdraft trips, they had then reversed all of it. It's like you're the MVP. Does this event honor my life or does it interrupt my stability? Because love should not require you to overdraft. Friendship should not require you to miss rent. Family should not require you to sacrifice your emergency fund. Speaking of miss rent, that's the one of the few videos from my second round of YouTube that still y'all can still view the story time about someone missing rent to go to Beyonce concert. Family should not require you to sacrifice your emergency fund. And if people only feel love when you financially inconvenience yourself, they may not want love. They may want proof of control. Some people will say you only live once while making decisions that make life harder for the next 6 months. Some people will say memories over money while ignoring that eviction also creates memories. Repossession creates memory. Credit damage creates memories. Stress creates memories. Regrets creates memories. So yes, enjoy life, celebrate, travel, show up for people you love, but do not let social pressure make you financially bleed in public while everybody claps. Especially because these things don't be guaranteed. Like the results you looking for, no one has ever achieved those results. And you're not factoring in the things that you're neglecting are probably making you feel worse. So buying more or doing more is not going to change that if it's not towards the problem. The secret, like if my roof is leaking and I decide to get new windows, that's not going to stop the roof leak. If I get a new flower bed put in, that's not going to stop the roof leak. If I upgrade the floors, that's not going to stop the roof leak. And that's exactly what it is when people try to overcompensate. Congratulations. Hopefully, you did have some type of good feeling. Hopefully, maybe you met somebody during the times that you were out in the wild that actually has a positive impact on your life. But it's these things that y'all are doing is making the people that y'all hate rich, and it's keeping you poor. Mm, I'm hungry. The secret prey pyramid. I honestly think overgivers and certain types of people pleasers are archetypes on a secret prey pyramid. I'm gonna make it my business to make either neutral or some positive tone videos, like at least 10 of them to kind of rent off all of these videos because it just feels so cynical. But oh well. Y'all have heard worse. I honestly think overgivers and certain types of people pleasers are, look, read that already. Their giving triggers the predator in some people. Not everyone, but some people. Some people do not even know they're a predator until they meet somebody with no boundaries. Then suddenly they start asking for more, testing more, taking more, expecting more. And the overgiver is thinking, I'm being loving. I'm so supportive. I'm helping this person out. Oh, they needed me. I was there. And I remember the times I was there. I needed somebody and nobody was there. And I'm being there for someone. Captain Planet. But the user is thinking, this works. That is how the dynamic forms. One person is giving from guilt, empathy, trauma, identity, obligation. The other person is receiving from entitlement, dependency, convenience, manipulation. And if no one interrupts the pattern, it becomes normal. It becomes the relationship, friendship, family role, workplace expectation. It becomes the group dynamic. And once a dynamic benefits people, they may not want it to change because your healing may feel like a pay cut to people who were living off your wounds. That is why growth can create conflict, not because growth is wrong, but because growth changes the economy of access. And also, any changes to the person being used sends a signal to the person using you that something is changing or they're in that you're about to be taken away from them. And that's what makes them rah, you know, but they don't realize what it is in some instances unless they're a pro. But and it's so funny because I had an instance in my Throwback Thursdays where there was one user trying to tell me, watch out for that person, they using you. And I was like, well, y'all kind of maneuver the same way, which was me telling them, bitch, you using me too. But y'all not really using me because I'm learning you. So I don't ever meet you again in life, ho. When overgiving becomes a habit loop. The habit loop of giving can become a part of the user's mind too. They get used to calling you. They get used to you answering. They get used to you fixing it. They get used to you calming down. They get used to you paying. They get used to you making exceptions. They get used to your discomfort being less important than their relief. And over time, they no longer see your help as generosity. And baby, over time, once that point comes, and if you take it away any of those things I mentioned, they're gonna be very hostile with you. Now, some situations they may be using it as a fear tactic, and they'll calm down because the play was to get you to get that gravy train going again. But sometimes, like for me, I'm a person. I don't give a fuck who you are. If you get out of pocket with me, that is the last interaction we will have. That's me. I don't care who you are. I don't play that because I am always respectful to people. Like if I've ever blown up on a person, it's not action and then I blow up on them. We beat and had a whole prequel, sequel, and how about I say a trequel, a trilogy. So for me, I'm always respectful to people, and no matter what the situation is, if I have to address people, which is not my most favorite thing to do, but I will always do it because you have to, is always in a respectful manner. And when it comes to personal life stuff, baby, I have different standards for personal life than in the streets. In the streets, it's zero tolerance, and with the side order of grace, because I really rather things either die down or be amicably resolved versus the war path. Because my war path is not your war path at all. And for me, anytime I've had to take that path, it was reluctantly done, but I get the job done is what I'm saying. That's why I don't play with the conflict stuff. Don't test me when it comes to stuff like that because you do not know who you're playing with. And even Throwback Thursday me was a motherfucker. So like, and that's why I always was being nice to people, trying to give a resolution. But my favorite thing is when a person poke enough and they get that rar, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, no, leave people alone. But it goes even deeper than that. People brains assign you a role, whether they realize it or not. They build a mental file on who you're supposed to be in their life. The listener, fixer, forgiving one who understands, one who comes through, one who never says no. You're the one who takes the disrespect and still shows up. So when you grow, you're not just changing your behavior, you're disrupting the role that their brain has assigned to you. And some people do not respond well when the character they created in their mind starts going off script. They may not even consciously understand why they're irritated. Parents, ooh, baby, you grow with some immature parents. Woo! Good luck. Good luck, babe. But something in them feels the shift. The old version of you was predictable. The old version of you was accessible. The old version of you gave them benefits. So when the new version starts having boundaries, discernment, silence, distance, and standards, their system reads it as a threat, not because you're harming them, but because you're no longer serving the function they preferred. That is why some people will subconsciously do things to hinder your growth or revert you back to the old version, like guilt tripping, testing boundaries, banging up the past, creating emergencies, accusing you of changing, you acting funny now. They may say you acting funny now, but I ain't acting funny. I'm acting free. And freedom looks strange to people who are comfortable with your captivity. Your boundary is not betrayal. Your boundary is the end of an unpaid contract you never consciously assigned. Freedom, freedom, I can't lose. Freedom, cut me loose. Overextending yourself shows up in subtle ways. Sometimes it is the kind coworker who always works late, the person who comes in on off days to keep the peace, the employee afraid of termination because the environment is hostile. Couldn't be me. Let me say this clearly. People in hostile work environments should learn their employee rights, document patterns, and review free legal resources from credible employment attorneys and labor agencies. And majority major cities has legal aid for people who income may not afford them the opportunity to access attorneys. I've seen people get legal aid for child support cases, custody cases, divorces, renters' rights, like you name it, it's there. Now, granted, they ask a lot of questions. And granted, if you are one of those people who suffer from overspending and living above your means, but based off of income percentiles, you're listed as being whatever, you may have an issue getting it. But yeah, you just never know. But don't take that as a no. Like, call 211 and sue them people, because sometimes what people call being a team player is really workplace exploitation with a pizza party attached. They love a good pizza party. Other times the overextension shows up in family. You may wed, have babies with, or live next to someone connected to chaos. Your partner may be the best person in the world. Then boom, cousin fate moves in with y'all. A soul food reference. Hashtag justice for Terry. Now you're dealing with somebody else's flawed family member because love came with a guest star you did not audition. Or maybe you move next to people who have more cars than driveway. Then their guests completely block your driveway while they stand there talking like your car is a decorative statue and that's not my driveway that you blocking. You chose the home, you did not choose the neighbors. Or it shows up in friendships. One friend keeps inserting random people into the friendship, always trying to reform the Avengers with a bunch of people who know them but not each other. Now you are busy being pressured to assimilate into a group dynamic you never requested. And some people comply so long they lose their own life inside somebody else's social experiment. Forced orbits are real. Sometimes you're not directly connected to the chaos, you're connected to someone who is connected to the chaos, and now the chaos has indirect access to you. That is why choosing people is not just about choosing them, it is about understanding the ecosystem they bring with them. And also pay attention to the fact that some people be trying to be the main character, so they purposely get a bunch of people who don't know each other. They're the one known, so everybody's energy is always going to be directed towards them. And then it's like they can, you know, like the little, they like, hello peasants, hello monkeys, like Frieza say. And the love trap, doing things love would never ask for. The reality is we love the idea of love so much that we do things love would never ask us to do. We self-abandon with a smile. We call it loyalty. We call it being a good person. We call it looking out for loved ones. But I have always found it weird when people expect your self neglect for their self preservation, because there is not one time in the history of J. New Orleans, Mr. 1990 life, that I have ever allowed anyone to pull me out of a hole at their own demise, them having to sacrifice for me or give me anything. I don't even take things from people who less fortunate. People who ever did a favor for me, unless you owe me money, I mean, people I did a favor for, that's the opposite of a Freudian slip, because baby, I wish. But people I did favors for, I never took money from them after that. And if anything, if I saw that their constant financial emergencies were due to, you know, messing around with the messing around, I definitely just distance myself, because I already knew what it was after a certain point of so many of those people, that I knew that if you just want self-destruct the connection, just tell them no. That's all. And it works like a charm. I cannot imagine watching someone destroy themselves to save me and calling that love. If I love you, I do not want your collapse on my conscience. If I care about you, I should not require you suffering as a proof. That is the difference between love and consumption. And that is why anytime I ever had beef with people, I've never told people while the beef was going on, because I never wanted people endangering themselves or doing anything to, no, like for me, whatever happened, it was gonna be on me, and that's it. Or even during my county P era, I definitely never did anything with other people. Hell no, at all. Because that's too much liability, and y'all see it on the body cam footage of how that work when people do stuff together. If I care about you, I should not require your suffering as proof. That is the difference between love and consumption. Love considers the cost to you. Consumption only cares that it got fed. And many people confuse attachment with love. Attachment says stay because I'm scared. Love says grow because I want you whole. Attachment says prove you can care like sacrificing. Love says I care enough not to require your destruction. Attachment says don't change. Love says become healthier even if I have to adjust. That is why some relationships cannot survive your healing because they were built on attachment, not love. They were built on roles, not respect. They were built on access, not alignment. And for me, my motto has always been for people I love you enough to let you go if I'm causing any ruckus in your life or you causing any ruckus in mine. That's always been. And even, and I've never not taken my gold medal for any part I had in the demise of anything, or even got to the point of trying to point, oh, so they wrong, I'm right, they wrong. I've never wanted to do that because if it's a genuine connection that's dying, I just needed to go through the grieving process. And then once the grieving process is over, I just move on. And unfortunately for me, being in the position of what this video is about, baby, I people used to stalk me. That's why, even though, yeah, I don't give out my number no more, or even like with people, baby, I'll give you my email address. I'll give you everything but the instant thing because people will swear, especially the way that people immediately try to narrative control and talk negatively about people when they part ways. But then when y'all were together, they were singing your praises to high heaven. So it's like either the praises were a lie or the insults are a truth. Which one? The job, the secret job that blocks elevation. The job is mentally programmed over time. Healing wounds would allow many people to realize they're running their health and finances into the ground, going down. But many people get stuck in a circle of complain and repeat. They know they are being done wrong. They can bookmark every Instagram post that describes their experience. They can repost every quote about boundaries. They can send videos about narcissists, toxic family, fake friends, emotional maturity, and healing. Then still find themselves on the phone, on the trip, at the event, in a group chat, or in someone's living room at the expense of their savings, PTO, sleep, peace, and future, just trying to keep up with people. Some people have missed work to the point of termination running behind their friends, like as far as knowing that you need had work the next day, but somebody, let's just go out for 1 hour. But there's somebody who always got to go to the after hour. And then once they get you intoxicated enough, they like, oh, you've been at that job for 5 years. They'll understand. And then you unemployed the next day. Some people have missed work. Some people stop showing up to work or start showing up late when their work friend gets terminated, even though they need money. Like the people who get so clicked up at work to where they start trying to work the same shift with them, or you have people, if the person get off earlier than them, they'll leave early and miss a few hours of pay just because they can't work without them. Or like at Planet Fitness, it was these chicks where one got more attention than the other one, and the one who was getting the attention, she was a cool person, but she had a lot of personal life drama going on. And then the one who was supposed to be her best friend, as they called each other in public and on social media, but the unattractive person got to the point of sabotaging her best friend. Every time the girl would be texting, she would take pictures and send it to the management. She would tell if she took went over her break. She would just be telling on the girl, and they supposed to be friends in real life. Like it was very strange. That is when attachments start making decisions your bills have to live with. And the bills do not care about your loyalty wound. Do you know how many people do not make the decision that would have elevated them because of the obligation of this secret job, of these ties to these people? People did not relocate. They didn't go back to school, take the promotion, leave the city, end the relationship, start the business, get rest, heal, build savings, or become who they were supposed to become, not because of potential, but because they were emotionally employed by people who were not building anything. That is a tragedy. And if you or someone you know were impacted, you may be entitled to compensation. Please call 1-800-LAW. To be talented, aware, capable, and still stuck because someone else's dysfunction has you on payroll with no paycheck. New Orleans. Loyalty and staying stuck. Many people in New Orleans will never leave. Never, never leave because they are attached or something or someone they're attached to will not leave. They will complain about every square inch of the city, the roads, job, crime, politics, schools, opportunities, the dating pool, the costs, dysfunction. When people think about the dating pool, do y'all ever consider all of those people who graduated and didn't know how to read and stuff, and that you're probably going to be coming across them when you're dating? But the option to leave is off the table, not because leaving is impossible, but because emotionally they are tied to people who have no intention of moving. That is when loyalty becomes a leash. And sometimes the thing holding you back is not hate. It is love with no vision. It is tradition with no pain. It is attachment dressed as responsibility. It is guilt wearing a family reunion t-shirt. And this is not just about New Orleans. This happens everywhere. People stay in dead towns, dead relationships, friend groups, dead jobs, mindsets, because leaving would make them feel like the villain. But sometimes the only way to honor your life is to disappoint the version of people who benefit from your stagnation. You can love where you are from and still leave. You can love people and still outgrow their environment. You can respect your roots without letting them trap or wrap around your ankles. Also, too, though, it's because when people are so stuck in reaction mode and Slick Side is on the Truman Show scene that's on repeat, it's not even about motivation, stagnation, or anything like that. The person brain literally is not realizing that yesterday was today, was tomorrow, was next week for them. Like in some cases, it's always interesting to see that in real time. But don't feed the bears, people. Do not, when you see people that stuck in that, baby, them people will take that as the deepest insult ever, as if you spit in their face if you tell them that. Again, remember, growth journey is for you. These videos discuss the impacts of growth before, during, and after, and impacts of your life. Possibly, because it's not guaranteed that people may act like this. Some people may cry and hug you and say, "Oh my God, I was waiting for you to wake up." And for the Verizon relocation regret, I have my own example. In 2012, when Verizon Wireless closed down the Houston location, call center, customer service, I turned down a relocation package to Florida with a $10,000 moving bonus. Why? Because I did not want to leave loved ones in Houston. Looking back, I feel like I still had some Disney dreaming in me at the time. I still believe life should been around emotional attachment. I still believe leaving people meant abandoning them, that love required proximity, but now I understand something different. It's unrealistic to think our lives should be limited to the groups of people currently in them. If we're not building or maintaining something healthy, then at some point we need to leave instead of complaining. Not everybody is meant to come ready to grow. Attached to your past deserves voting power over your future. Sometimes the opportunity does not come back in the same outfit. That is what regret teaches you. Regret is not just sadness over what happened. It's the ghost of what could have happened if you've chosen yourself sooner. And that does not mean you beat yourself up forever. Don't beat yourself up at all. That's wasted energy. Like you could have pressure for yourself, be upset with yourself, but don't waste your energy beating yourself up because you're in the present at every given moment. So when you looking back at the past, don't waste your present on the past. Just make the present a gift. And the future never gets here because we're always in the present, but the present eventually becomes the future. And it means you learn, you take the lesson, you stop romanticizing sacrifice, you stop letting guilt sign contracts on behalf of your future. That's just like how the present people, all that debt that people currently get in, all of the different things that people didn't do, the health exams that people are not taking now, that's going to hunt them later on, the vitamins that people are not putting in their body, over time you're going to have irreversible damage because that is something that people can't beat. Isn't you can't beat it. And cognitive, but see, people have normalized it. All of that, my age and my knees. Cognitive dissonance and misplaced priorities. It has to be cognitive dissonance because people will refuse to spend $500 to hire movers, then spend $4,000 on concert tickets at a place where they also have professional conferences during the work week. So it's really like you spending $4,000 like if it's luxury, but the venue is not even a special place. You can actually enter that same venue for free during the work week. They will say they cannot afford therapy, but can afford bottle service. They cannot afford a certification, but can't afford a weekend trip. Afford to fix their car, but can't afford outfits for 3 events. Can't afford a savings account, but can't afford to keep up appearance. This is not just about money. It's about values. It's about emotional decision making. It's about choosing temporary identity boosts over long term stability. And these things get added to regret. The regret you feel now, the regret future you will feel if you keep moving the same way. You better lay low because future you is always inheriting the decisions that current you is too scared to make. Cognitive dissonance is when your mouth and your habits are arguing. You say you want peace, but you keep answering chaos. That's like the people who say they stay to themselves, but then they call all. It's probably 100 calls a day. Them gossiping. You say you want money, but you keep funding appearances. You say you want growth, but you keep asking permission from people committed to staying the same. You say you are tired, but you keep volunteering exhaustion. At some point, the evidence of your life has to be stronger than the story you tell yourself because you can only say, I had no choice for so long before you have to admit you were choosing familiarity over freedom. Renovating the self. You can stop living based on old habits at any point, step by step. You can carve your personality and reshape your life. You can start one day with any type of habit, like I always say. Now, it's always tempting to do the overhaul because you have the need of wanting to make up for lost time, and then you also be wanting to shake that dirt of shame off. And yeah, so but so don't rush it. And if it's something that you decide to do, stick with it. Like you may fall off, you may have errors, you may have to restart, but stick with it. Don't ever abandon the idea of growth unless you just want the life that everyone else is living. But whatever you accept, accept it. When you accept stuff, you're supposed to really accept it. You're not supposed to accept, but then decline this later. Accepting it, not it don't work that way. And once you accept it, you come with the realization of how it works and how it doesn't work, so that you stop having unrealistic expectations. And yes, when you renovate a home, generally you handle the foundation, structure, major systems before cosmetic upgrades. If the foundation is unstable, pretty walls do not matter. New Orleans, a lot of area, we have a lot of sinking. The roof is leaking, new floors can get ruined. If the electrical is damaged, decorations do not save the house, and you can have an electrical fire. And if you ever are involved in an electrical fire, you're supposed to cut off the source of electricity. You cannot, like, there are specific fire extinguishers that work with those, but it'll be labeled that. But you want to cut the electricity source off, otherwise, the fire will not stop. So the exact order depends on the condition of the home, but the principle is real. Fix what holds the house up before you decorate what people can see. And that applies to people too. Some of us are trying to paint the walls of our personality while the foundation is guilt. We are trying to decorate a life built on obligation. We are trying to look successful while emotionally living in a house with water damage, bad wiring, and a roof patched with childhood coping mechanisms. At some point, you have to renovate the self, not the image, not the captions, not the group you hang around, the self, the foundation, the wiring, the habits, the emotional budget, the boundaries, the belief system. Once you start doing inner work, you don't just learn about yourself, you start seeing people differently too, and you start noticing your own wounds, patterns, triggers, need to be needed, fear of being misunderstood, your own emotional habits, but also dun, 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 Surprise benefit. You start recognizing patterns in other people faster, seeing what other people are projecting. It's always like when I first started discovering how that work in real time, it's crazy. When somebody is not actually mad at you, they are mad at what your boundary exposed. When someone calls you selfish because your growth interrupts their access, you start seeing when someone says you change because they cannot say I lost control. You start seeing when someone's advice is really fear. It's a lot. A lot of people, parents or people they related to from survival mode, definitely gives fear advice on damn near everything. You start seeing when someone's criticism is actually a confession about their own limitation. Inner work gives you a mirror first, but after a while, it gives you a microscope. And that microscope can be uncomfortable because you now see the little emotional fingerprints people leave on every interaction. You notice who only celebrates you when your growth does not challenge them. You notice who supports your healing in theory but gets offended by your boundaries in practice. You notice who wants better but not different, who wants you healed but still available, who wants you confident but not confident enough to leave. That is when growth gets lonely. I get so lonely. Can't let just anybody on. You are the one made for me to see. Because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. And once you cannot unsee it, you can't keep pretending that certain behavior is accidental. Renovation is messy. You may have to tear out walls. You may find mold behind something that looked fine. You may discover bad wiring, realize the house was standing. That is inner work. It reveals what was hidden. Once you see what has been holding your life together, you get the chance to rebuild it with the intention of survival. The final boss, guilt and shame, and announcing growth. Guilt and shame will always be the final boss, especially if you care about what others' perception of you. And social media, workplaces, family members, neighbors, you know, when you stop overgiving, people may call you selfish. When you stop answering every call, people may say you change. When you stop saving people, they act like you betrayed them. When you stop funding dysfunction, they may question your character. When you stop showing up exhausted, they may say you think you're better than them. But sometimes you change really means you're no longer easy to use. Sometimes you're selfish. You started including yourself in your own care. Sometimes you forgot where you came from means you remember where you're going. And sometimes the people who benefited from your wounds will not celebrate your healing because your healing closes the access point. It's actually embarrassing because if especially if you have similar wounds to them, it's embarrassing that you did the work but they didn't. This is why announcing growth can be dangerous. Everyone does not need a press release about your healing. They do not need to know your next move. They do not need a front row seat to your transformation. And the internet popularizes that because people grift with that. They grift with healing. They sell you their courses and their books that help and all this other stuff. And then you get the book and it's blah, blah, blah. You're broke, blah, blah, blah. Do better. Sometimes telling people I am working on boundaries is really giving bad actors the blueprint. Now they know the exact door you're trying to close. Now they know the exact weakness you're trying to strengthen. Now they know where to apply pressure. Now they know how to test a new version of you. If you announce, I am done letting people guilt trip me, some people will simply switch tactics. If you announce, I'm trying to stop people pleasing, some people may create a situation designed to make you prove you still care. If you announce I am focusing on myself, people who benefited from your lack of focus may interpret that as ignorance. Not because you said anything arrogant, but because your growth changes their access. And when people are losing a version of you that benefited them, they may treat your healing like an insult. They may hear I'm growing as I'm better than you. They may hear I need space as you're beneath me, you bum. They may hear I have boundaries now as you do not matter, you has been. But growth is not always arrogance. Sometimes growth is simply refusing to keep dying in a role that made everyone else comfortable. That is why some transformations have to be quiet, not secret because you're ashamed, quiet because you are protecting the seed before it becomes a tree. And you do not announce every root while it's forming underground. I wish trees did that because the way these trees will start sprouting roots and then now we have potholes and houses sinking. You water it, you guard it, you let it grow. Then one day people look up and realize they can no longer reach the branches the way they used to. And by then you do not have to explain. Your life explains it for you because not everyone deserves access to the construction site. Some people will sabotage the building before it has walls. People will laugh at the blueprint, steal the materials, keep reminding you of the old house because they like living in it rent free. So do the work quietly when necessary, loudly only when it's safe, and especially only if it's in safe environments such as a therapist or a support group or somewhere where people are limited in what destruction they can do to you. Some of the most powerful growth happens where nobody can clap for it, criticize it, or contaminate it. In closing, resign from the job that pays in exhaustion. The job I did not know I had was being everyone's 24/7 crisis line, but I understand now. I wasn't helping. I was performing a role that was programmed into me, trying to prevent loss, pain, protect bystanders, prove goodness, trying to be the person I once needed. But healing taught me that you can be kind without being available for destruction. You can care without being consumed. You can love people without letting them live inside your nervous system. You can support someone without being their solution. You can resign from a job that only pays in exhaustion because there's a difference between having a good heart and having no gate around it. There is a difference between being loyal and being emotionally employed. There is a difference between helping someone through a storm and moving into the storm with them. At some point, you have to ask yourself, who am I becoming while trying to keep everyone else afloat? Them when I had to ask them questions, baby, them answers. Whoo, they ask me no questions, they give me no answers. What did I lose while trying to save people from consequences? What opportunities did I miss because I thought love meant staying reachable? And the whole love thing, loving people that don't have self-love is you're playing, you're really playing because these people don't even have love inside of themselves. So where is the love that they have for you coming from? Growth does not always need to be announced. Sometimes it needs to be invited because the people who truly love you will adjust to the healthier version of you. The people who only benefited from the wounded version will keep trying to summon the old one back. That is how you know who was connected to your soul and who was connected to your access. Because your life is not supposed to be a 24-hour help desk for people committed to malfunctioning. And that's what people go wrong with trying to get people from their starter environment to where they currently are. And you have so many people who grew up in impoverished areas and they trying to take these people along, and then these people eventually backdoor them because those people never went through the journey that triggered the change that you did. So you're teleporting them to destinations that you had to walk to get to, and that's why it's no alignment there. Your piece is not a public resource. Your phone is not an emergency room. Your savings is not a community grant. Your home is not a halfway house for poor decisions. Your nervous system is not a group project. And your future should not be held hostage by people who only remember you when they need rescue. So, yes, be kind, be loving, be generous, be compassionate, be wise. Because reckless kindness in a world full of takers is not virtue, it is self abandonment with good manners. And the next time somebody tries to hand you a crisis they refuse to grow from, you do not have to be cruel. You do not have to be cold. You do not have to explain your entire healing journey. As far as the cruel and cold, baby, that's between you and them. I'm not telling you what not to do. But yeah, definitely don't explain your entire healing journey. I will tell you that. Don't do that. You will regret it. You can simply say, I hope you find the right support for that, and then let the phone ring, not because you care, but because you finally do. And that is it for this video. If you made it to this part, bless your heart. That is a lot of listening. But I also will say that the benefit of inner work is that when you start this process of going from being around all these people or growing and all of the stuff that's mentioned in this video, you may find yourself repeatedly thinking of these people, but when you do inner self work and you get you some stuff to do, you be so lost in your inner world and keeping up with yourself and upgrading yourself and smiling at yourself and different things that you don't think about these people unless it's a specific reason to think about them. Or maybe it's a similar situation you seeing on television. But before that, when you are outsourcing your inner work to other people, your life be revolving around other people, checking your phone if somebody texts you, thinking about stuff they told you that they doing, even though they can't remember nothing about your life. But you remember, oh, did you have a great day at your first job? How was your interview? Oh, you had a date? Did you make it home safe? Yeah. And I mean, that's like, don't ever lose those qualities. It's never wrong being a good person. It's just you have to qualify people. The same way businesses, credit scores, memberships, schools, jobs qualify people, you should be doing the same thing. You see what happens when places don't have requirements. We see it in society. You see all of the different places that get destroyed because they don't have rules, and how gyms be so filthy because they don't enforce the fact that people are supposed to pick up after themselves. It's in the contract. Or the constant scandals of recording at the gym, even though a lot of the gyms, Planet Fitness and Club 4 to be exact, have strict rules against recording. But nevertheless, happy day for you. Rest in peace to spirit and continue your growth. And like, if you think negative, oh, every time, every thought you have, ask why. Especially if it's a thought that you're trying to fight, ask why. Start questioning the thoughts. Where did it come from? Why does it feel that way? And please get therapy. I, from experience, know that for whatever reason, the behavioral health sector for the New Orleans area, because I ain't gonna say everywhere, for the New Orleans area, it is very difficult to get to those people. You have to really be about it to get somebody. So if it's like that other places, if you someone who was already reluctant, that's all you needed. Oh, it's hard. It's hard to get them. I love that. Oh, y'all, I tried to get therapy, but it's so hard. It's so hard to get a therapist. But y'all have a great day. That's it.
Like, comment, and subscribe to J New Orleans.